This is day 1 of the April 95 7-day retreat in Springwater. Yesterday, in talking about the eyes, I forgot to mention something which I will do now, because it is important, particularly since there are also people here who have never been here before. A lot of people who participate in meditation retreats like this one are in this hall or walk around the building or maybe even on the paths outside with their eyes down. It's up to each one. There's nothing prescribed here. But a lot of people prefer to do that than to look around and to look at other people. And if one is not used to this, the interpreting mind, which is always ready to spring into action, may interpret this as people being unfriendly, unsociable, worried, depressed. Sometimes whichever way one feels oneself is projected onto other people with whom one does not have eye contact. So to be aware of the interpretive mind and its interpretations, and not to take them as reports about the truth out there. This is one thing to become aware of, is how much we live with interpretation and believe that to be a true fact. There's probably considerable survival value in the brain interpreting what it sees and remembering that, and rather than reality checking, to live in this remembered reality, or what one thinks one knows. But here's a place to become aware of it and question it. That's why it's neat to interpret to experiment oneself with not looking around, not looking into other people's eyes, not making this deeply habitual eye contact, and to find out by experimenting with not doing it how we depend on it, how we depend on eye contact to know whether we are approved of, whether we are liked, to always need to be in the know what other people are like, how they feel, and using eye contact and the subsequent interpretation for garnering this kind of security, which is not true security. Of course, it's nice to look into each other's eyes and smile at each other. It's a wonderful thing, particularly if it does not come out of sheer habit, upbringing to smile at each other, for fear of not being liked. But if it's a genuine affection, which may not be there at this moment, and a retreat like this relieves one the possibility of not looking at each other or doing these polite or habitual things and amenities, relieves one of it. And maybe revealing a contact that is possible with other human beings or trees, birds, sun and moon, the grass and the clouds, which is not based on conditioned behavior, conditioned politeness or conditioned interest, which is free of that and a genuine in-touchness, which then one notices to one's amazement does not necessarily need the contact of language or eyes to be there. This genuine in-touchness and maybe affection for one another is not dependent on our learned ways, which are not being condemned here, please understand it right. We're examining everything about ourselves, each other, our relationship with each other. And maybe in this examination something entirely new turns up. Which is not dependent on words or knowledge or conditioned behavior, but comes with completely being here in all simplicity. In the first talk of a retreat, we inevitably talk about listening first, a new kind of listening, inwardly, outwardly, to a talk like this, which is given daily. How do we listen to our breathing? To the birds singing or the wind in the trees? How do we listen to a gurgling stomach or an ache or pain? And since this is what is going on right now, how do we listen to a talk? In addition to this open, natural listening with which I'm very sure with which we're born, I may be wrong, but in addition to this open listening, which is possible even in old age, another kind of listening has sort of superimposed itself. And that is listening according to knowledge, to what we know, listening according to expectation. We expect something to be said to us, and the whole organism is deeply affected by this expectation. If we expect that something will be said that may be painful to us, something critical will be said, something disturbing, the organism provides instant armament, instant defense, which affects the organs of perception. They may not only physically narrow, but also listen to things that the brain provides from memory, rather than hearing openly, undefendedly, vulnerably what someone is saying. And at the same time listening to this potential or actual mobilization of defense inwardly. Is such listening possible? Which is more than or deeper than our accustomed listening or hearing. Well, someone says, yes, it is possible. And certainly we can question how we listen to ourselves, to each other. And one will find that a lot of our looking, listening is very jaded with what we're afraid of or what we want to hear. Jaded with sheer memory of what people who sit in a chair like this usually say in a meditation center, or what one has read about the person, and therefore an oriented mindset to hear more of that kind, or a mindset to battle it, to resist it. We listen with a yearning to be confirmed in what we believe. And we're afraid of hearing something that may undermine, as it were, our belief system. We may not hear it as an undermining of our belief system. We may hear it as a threat to it, or as something wrong. And one can, if one is at all interested and inwardly open, feel rushing to uphold what one believes. Because the whole body is dependent, or seems to be dependent, on a stable belief system, or many stable belief systems, which hold it in control physically, chemically. And if something rattles the belief system, this physical, chemical, electrical structure may manifest turmoil. So how open, how unpreoccupied is this listening or being here this moment in the presence of someone saying things which are not said to preach the truth or a dogma, but to arouse in all of us, including myself, an ever renewable questioning. Everything is there to be observed, to be inspected. Maybe a discomfort or a pleasure which may say, more, I want more of this. Or one may wake up to the fact that one hasn't been listening at all, which is not being judged here or condemned, but it is interesting to see it happen in retrospect, because at the time one is not listening, there's fantasy going on, or involvement with future planning, remembering past experiences. And suddenly, out of nowhere, a moment of waking up to that and realizing one hasn't heard part of the talk. And at this very crucial moment of, out of nowhere, waking up this moment, what happens? The memory is still fresh of what the mind was occupied with a moment ago or moments ago. And is it possible just to see it at a glance? Whatever was going on, and not linger with it in judgment, condemning the inattention, condemning the content of what was thought about, or noticing a desire to continue with the fantasy, not wanting to be here. It's an amazing thing what one can come upon. One professes one wants to be in the here and now, but at a crucial moment of waking up to dream and fantasy, maybe the amazing realization is an urge to continue with a fantasy and afraid of being here, or maybe afraid of the idea of being here. Because true being here is not an idea and is not fearsome. It's not threatening. Only ideas about it arouse the threat, which is physical manifestations in the body. So this beautiful, crucial moment of coming to, can it remain? No, it doesn't remain. Or does it? But the question was, can it remain unspoiled by instant self-judgment or other judgment? Or, if that has already taken place, it comes so quick, so habitual, then another fresh moment of just seeing that. How quick the judgment, and how instantaneous with the judgment the absence of this openness. Of course, if it is directly seen as openness, again, afresh. So to by and by, from moment to moment, come upon this heavy conditioned mind and body, which we call me. And in the midst of it, as it were, here and there, an instant of what? Just the breathing? Just a motor humming? The warmth of the air? Bird calling? Stomach gurgling? A pain somewhere? The aching, what is it? To allow everything to be there at this time of no time, without any obligation to meddle with it. It can all be there. It is there. No one did it. It happens all on its own. We happen on our own, or on its own. There's not a controller there who says, now the next moment this has to happen, and after that, that has to happen. We think that way, but that's not how it happens. motor, humming, the birds singing, the breathing, all the physical sensations of pain or warmth or comfort, pleasantness. The light, it's all there. At the same time, only thought separates it into before, now, and after. But it's all there simultaneously. When this body-mind is open and receptive and vulnerable, which means undefended by idea and past conditioning. Now, whatever comes up in a retreat talk such as this, I think I mentioned it before, it is not said to indoctrinate people or to create followers. To be made into an authority, which is a strong program in all of us. To create authority out of a need for authority and to fight the authority that one has created or to follow. There's no intention for this to happen, but it does happen. We yearn for the comfort and safety of being in the presence of someone who knows, who guides, who tells us what to do and not to do. And at the same time, there is an inner rebellion against that. Because maybe fundamentally each one of us wants to be free, which is our birthright, to be free. Independent, but interdependent. So, what is said is offered for inspection, for questioning, for discussion, if you will. Not for unconditional acceptance. This is not at all the intention. Whatever's said needs to be seen by each one for herself, himself, directly. And no one can do it for one. One can speak out of looking, out of openness, but one cannot convince or make someone else see. One may convince someone intellectually, but not make someone see. Seeing happens entirely on its own. Maybe it is aided by a situation like this where we're all listening quietly. We come out of quiet sitting. But nothing causes it because it happens on its own. So there is no need to create authority. in another, or to assume authority for oneself, which can happen very quickly if one thinks one understands something, maybe has had insight which has now become verbalized, formulated, and then the temptation to become the authority, to have power over others, or to give power to others. Can one examine all of this? It is offered here for inspection. Because it takes place in human beings like you and me, not the politicians far away in Washington. It happens in ourselves. And to the extent that we become very intimate with the processes taking place in this body-mind, to that extent it's possible to understand others and allow compassion to operate, rather than condemnation and hatred, rejection, judgment. So the format of a retreat includes meetings, group meetings and individual meetings, where it's possible to take up questions that have been aroused, maybe by a talk. We have never changed the format of the talk itself, although here and there is a request for it. Couldn't we ask right as you talk or make a comment? We have discussed it with each other. And usually the almost or complete consensus has been, let the talk flow and we'll ask questions later in group or private meetings. So don't feel shy or afraid to bring up something to question or to disagree. I may not have put something right or may not see something clearly. I'm as human as everyone else. And it is always so refreshing to look at something anew. I may not remember what I said. I don't usually. But what's the problem? We can look at it now. If the question is awake, alive, we'll look now, you and me, or us together, sharing our inquiry. In a beautiful way. Beautiful meaning the openness to listen to someone else who disagrees. And maybe the relief from immediately feeling a target. And yet the tendency is there, the habit is there. We have learned from very earliest of times to protect ourselves because we have been hurt very early in life. Been ridiculed or humiliated or punished, blamed, corrected. So this body-mind has learned to defend its image, maybe itself, maybe the body too, if one was beaten. Maybe one was not able to protect oneself. So the beauty of coming together in a group is if we listen to someone disagree with us and listen to the whole program in place to protect oneself, or to counterattack, or to withdraw. from the pain of battle or contentiousness. How open can this body-mind remain in the presence of attack or disagreement or criticism? It's a marvelous challenge. I didn't say you must stay open or I must stay open. That's not the right approach. Is it possible to stay open and to become interested in this? There's nothing we've ever practiced or learned to practice. We have learned instinctually or through imitation to defend, to protect, and to attack or withdraw. This is an entirely new, open possibility. To be there, awake, listening. I have to immediately question the listening, because if I feel attacked, the whole listening apparatus is affected by that fear of attack. Affected through the protective mechanism of narrowing down, hardening, if you will, but also memories streaming in of how it was before when I was attacked. We're not aware of this in those terms, but it happens like this. And the more there is watching going on, the more of this reveals itself to each one of us. And in the beginning or for a long while, one may just watch all the conditioned responses and reflexes taking place of defense, attack, or withdrawal, just watching it helplessly, it seems. But something is also learned in this quiet, helpless, if you will, watching, observing, listening. There's learning going on in that. Of a different kind than the learning which has the obligation to commit to memory. So I have a useful tool. It's not that kind of learning. It's seeing how we function, how other people function like we do. Very similar. Always some differences, of course. And to bring up new and deeper questions. What am I defending? With such energy, with such pain, or such alienation, or fear. And is it worth it? Not saying it judgmentally, but existentially. And maybe when it does happen, the relief of just listening without any need to protect an image. Because in the beginning one doesn't see that one is just protecting images. One thinks, I'm protecting myself. But what is that myself? We're questioning right to the first day of retreat. What is this myself? We may not have an answer, but we can watch. It can reveal itself in quiet observing, alone and in relationship. In a week's retreat, the quietness is furnished, or we're furnishing it ourselves. Our daily life, it is not furnished most of the time. It's not quiet. That's why it's such a beautiful thing to have a place where one can come and sit alone quietly and also interact out of quietness and back into silence. With much more powerful opportunity to become aware of what binds us and hurts us and scares us and makes us angry. And the joy of seeing it all happen when there's no investment in it. It doesn't matter what is discovered, something painful, something embarrassing, or something pleasurable or joyful. When something is directly seen, there's tremendous feeling and happiness or joy. Truth of this moment, you could say, not as an idea or a philosophy, but as a direct revelation. Ka, ka, ka. We will end here for today.